Charles Duke carries a secret that no other human being on Earth possesses. At 89, he's one of only 4 surviving moonwalkers. But that's not what makes him unique. Duke is the only person who experienced Apollo from both sides of history. First, as the voice that steadied Neil Armstrong's landing, then as the young explorer who bounced across alien soil himself. Picture this: July 20th, 1969. While the world held its breath, Duke sat at a console in Houston, his southern drawl cutting through mission-control tension. When Armstrong's crackling voice announced, "The Eagle has landed," millions heard Duke's immediate response. "Roger, tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again." Those words made him famous before he ever left Earth. But Duke wasn't celebrating in Times Square. He was the invisible astronaut, the steady voice guiding heroes while dreaming of his own chance to touch another world. 3 years later, that dream became reality. Duke stepped onto the moon as the youngest human ever to walk there. Now, with time running short, he's sharing what that dual experience really taught him. And it's not the story NASA wants you to remember. If you want to hear the unvarnished truth from someone who lived it twice, make sure you subscribe. Duke's revelations will change how you see humanity's greatest adventure. Understanding Duke's story means understanding the crushing responsibility he carried as Capcom. When you're the voice between Earth and space, every syllable matters. Every pause gets analyzed. Every inflection carries the weight of human history. Duke has described those Apollo 11 moments in vivid detail, sitting at his console, watching data streams, knowing that one wrong word could rattle the crew at the worst possible moment. "I wasn't just talking to Neil and Buzz," he reflects. "I was talking to them while the entire world listened over my shoulder." But here's the twist that shaped everything. Duke was a pilot himself, trained for the exact mission he was guiding from the ground. He wasn't just reading from a script. He was flying the mission mentally, while Armstrong and Aldrin flew it physically. Guiding them felt like watching your children take their first steps, Duke has said. You want to reach out and steady them, but all you can do is use your voice. That experience created an unprecedented psychological profile. Duke wasn't just another astronaut waiting his turn. He was a pilot who had already lived a moon mission in his mind before ever strapping into a spacecraft himself. The 3 years between Apollo 11 and his own mission weren't just waiting. They were preparation fueled by intimate knowledge of what lunar flight really demanded. When Duke's boots hit lunar soil on April 21st, 1972, his first reaction wasn't wonder. It was shock. The moon looked nothing like he'd expected, despite having absorbed countless hours of imagery from previous missions. The contrast was beyond anything I'd prepared for, Duke recalls. You've got this black sky that isn't just dark. It's like looking into the void of space itself. And then this blindingly bright surface that almost hurts to look at. Duke spent years trying to explain this visual phenomenon. Earth-based training couldn't replicate the absolute absence of atmospheric filtering. Every shadow was knife-edge sharp. Every rock stood out with surgical precision. The human eye struggled to process such extreme contrasts. When people look at Apollo photos, they think they're seeing what we saw, he explains. In truth, the cameras could never handle the range. What I witnessed was overwhelming. The psychological impact was immediate and lasting. Duke found himself in a landscape that obeyed completely different visual rules. No soft edges, no atmospheric haze, no gradual transitions between light and dark, just brutal, alien precision. But there was another shock waiting, one that shattered Apollo's most romantic myth. Here's something that still surprises people. Duke never saw the famous Earthrise during his 3 days on the moon. The iconic image that defines Apollo for most people simply wasn't visible from Apollo 16's landing site. Earth was directly overhead, Duke explains. If I wanted to see it, I'd have to crane my neck backward inside the helmet. But the suit was so stiff that looking up meant seeing the inside of my own helmet. This reality check demolishes one of our most cherished Apollo assumptions. We imagine every moonwalker spent contemplative moments gazing at Earth. Duke's experience was far more constrained. The helmet created a fishbowl effect that limited peripheral vision. Duke could see forward clearly, but turning to look around required twisting his entire body. It wasn't the panoramic experience you see in movies, he notes. It was more like looking through a narrow window while wearing a straitjacket. These physical limitations forced Duke to experience the moon differently than popular culture imagines. Instead of sweeping vistas, he navigated through focused tunnel vision moments. The suit designed to keep him alive also kept him isolated from the perspectives that make lunar exploration seem romantic. While Apollo 11 gets remembered for first steps and Apollo 13 for dramatic rescue, Apollo 16 quietly revolutionized our understanding of the moon. Duke and John Young didn't just visit, they conducted sophisticated scientific investigation that continues paying dividends 50 years later. The mission's crown jewel was humanity's first lunar observatory. Duke helped deploy a far ultraviolet telescope that captured celestial images impossible from Earth. We literally gave astronomers their first look at the universe from outside our atmosphere, Duke points out. The scientific workload was relentless. Duke and Young spent 71 hours on the surface, nearly 3 full days of activity. They drove the lunar rover across 16 miles of rugged terrain, collecting 209 pounds of diverse lunar material. Advanced instruments mapped the moon's chemical fingerprint. X-ray and gamma-ray spectrometers revealed concentrations of iron, titanium, and magnesium that reshaped theories about lunar formation. Scientists today still cite data we collected in 1972, Duke notes, with justified pride. Yet this scientific treasure trove gets overshadowed by missions with more dramatic narratives. Duke feels the sting of this historical oversight personally. We deserved more than a footnote, he admits. In pure science, we were unmatched. Between the serious scientific work, Duke experienced moments of pure human spontaneity that NASA's carefully managed image rarely showed. The most famous became known as the Lunar Olympics, impromptu high-jumping contests in 1/6 gravity. Duke describes the temptation perfectly. You're in this environment where you can jump higher than any human ever has. How do you resist testing the limits? His attempt at lunar high jumping sent him flying higher than expected. The landing went wrong. Duke toppled backward, potentially damaging the life support backpack keeping him alive. It was incredibly stupid, he admits. I could have killed myself showing off. But these human moments reveal something essential. Despite being surrounded by hostile vacuum and alien landscape, the astronauts remained recognizably human. They got excited, made mistakes, found ways to play even in the most serious circumstances. Duke also describes the peculiar challenges of working in the bulky suit. Simple tasks became complex puzzles. Every movement was deliberate, clumsy, and effortful. People see the footage and think we were gracefully bounding around, Duke notes. In reality, we were struggling with equipment that barely let us function. Decades after walking on the moon, Duke faces an unexpected challenge. people who insist the entire Apollo program was faked. The most memorable encounter occurred when a conspiracy theorist cornered him after a presentation. Instead of arguing with elaborate evidence, Duke simply looked the man in the eye and said, "Sir, I was there." The simple statement carried tremendous weight. Duke wasn't just claiming expertise, he was speaking from unique authority of someone who had guided one lunar mission from mission control and then walked on the surface himself. When someone denies Apollo happened, Duke reflects, they're not just questioning NASA, they're questioning the sacrifices of people who risked their lives to expand human knowledge. Duke's response isn't anger, it's methodical evidence. He describes details only someone who lived them could know. The way lunar dust clung to everything, the sensation of 1/6 gravity, the absolute silence when radio communication cut out. He points to physical evidence no conspiracy could manufacture. 842 pounds of lunar samples distributed worldwide, retroreflectors still bouncing laser beams back to Earth. Duke's dual perspective makes him uniquely qualified to address these challenges. He experienced Apollo from multiple angles, understanding both technical complexity and human reality. Beyond the technical achievements, Duke experienced something profound during his 3 days on the moon. The psychological impact of existing in such an utterly alien environment affected him in ways training never anticipated. The silence was unlike anything you can experience on Earth, Duke explains. When radio communication cut out, you were alone with just the sound of your own breathing and heartbeat. No wind, no water, no signs of life anywhere. The moon's complete sterility created an existential weight that Duke struggles to convey. Every rock, every crater, every grain of dust existed in perfect stillness. Nothing had ever grown, adapted, or evolved there. Standing there, you realize how precious and fragile Earth really is, Duke reflects. You're looking at a world that never knew life, and it makes you appreciate every living thing back home. The psychological impact went deeper. Duke describes moments of profound isolation when the alien nature became overwhelming. The sharp contrast between black sky and white surface created visual disorientation that was both humbling and disturbing. At 89, Duke feels the urgency of time passing. He's one of only 4 surviving moonwalkers, and when his generation dies, Apollo will shift from living memory to historical record. Every year, I feel the responsibility growing heavier, Duke admits. These experiences, these details that no textbook can capture, they'll disappear unless we share them now. Duke has responded by increasing his public appearances dramatically. He visits schools, participates in documentaries, and sits for lengthy interviews. The goal isn't personal recognition. It's preservation of authentic experience. At the South Carolina State Museum, Duke told students, standing on the moon wasn't just about planting a flag. It was about proving that humans could survive and work in the most hostile environment imaginable. That lesson matters for your future. Duke sees direct connections between Apollo's challenges and humanity's next adventures, the psychological preparation, technical problem-solving, and teamwork under extreme pressure, all essential skills for Mars exploration. The moon was our training ground, he explains. Everything we learned there applies to going further. We're near the end of Duke's incredible story. But first, hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more authentic accounts from people who made history. Duke sees Apollo not as a completed achievement, but as the first chapter in humanity's expansion beyond Earth. The Artemis program represents continuation, rather than repetition of Apollo's mission. "We never finished what we started," Duke explains. "Apollo showed we could get there and work there. Now we need to show we can live there permanently." The lessons from Duke's generation remain directly applicable to modern space exploration. The psychological challenges of isolation, technical demands of life support, and importance of systematic preparation all will determine success for Mars missions. Duke is particularly excited about international cooperation characterizing modern space exploration. "Apollo was mostly American," he notes, "but going to Mars will require the whole world working together." Looking toward the future, Duke believes his generation's most important contribution wasn't the footprints they left. It was proof that such journeys were achievable. They transformed space travel from science fiction to engineering reality. "When people watch Artemis launches, I want them to remember that real people with real fears made this possible," Duke says. "The same human courage that got us to the moon will take us to Mars and beyond." As one of the last living links to humanity's greatest adventure, Duke carries both the responsibility of accurate testimony and excitement of ongoing possibility. His story reminds us that space exploration succeeds through human determination, careful preparation, and willingness to face the unknown. Charles Duke's journey from mission control to lunar surface represents the complete Apollo experience. His authentic accounts strip away mythology to reveal real challenges, achievements, and lessons that will guide humanity's next giant leaps. If his unique perspective has given you new appreciation for space exploration's human reality, subscribe for more stories from the people who lived history. At 89, Duke knows his time for sharing these stories is limited, but his words preserve the authentic experience of Apollo for generations who will carry humanity even further into the cosmos.